We found an AI chatbot on the dark web. I couldn't believe we were actually doing this. Jasmine and I sat huddled together in my dimly lit bedroom, our faces bathed in the bluish glow of my laptop screen. Our curiosity had led us down a rabbit hole of dark web exploration videos on YouTube, which we found ourselves routinely watching every Friday night that we'd hang with each other. Jasmine and I would spend hours each Friday night watching Some Ordinary Gamers, Lucid, and Crypto NWO. But tonight, we decided we were going to do it ourselves. We lived in a small town in Illinois called Lake Forest, miles away from anywhere that had even the slightest bit of life. School was out for the summer, and we had nothing better to do. I mean, staying in my room and doing this was a lot more interesting than going to the Lake Forest Rec Center and getting hit on by the creepy guy at the front desk. I know what you're thinking, but we weren't being stupid about this. We spent hours watching videos about the dark web, so we made sure to take the necessary precautions to make sure some weirdo didn't get my address and kidnap us or something. I downloaded Tor, a VPN, and I even ran everything through a virtual machine, so we were gonna be fine. Hours passed, and the initial thrill began to wane. Honestly, the dark web turned out to be a place that was predictable. We came across websites that sold weed and harder drugs like Coke and X. Another site we found sold military-grade weapons and took Bitcoin as payment. Nothing that we hadn't seen on YouTube. There were definitely some weird sites, not anything grossly weird like gore, thank God, but weird nonetheless. Jasmine was particularly fond of this one website. A guy made an entire website where he would stream himself throwing a slice of cheese at a baby. He'd switch from American to Swiss to mozzarella. For whatever reason, Jasmine thought this was hilarious. For that kid's sake, I hope that's his dad just being an idiot and he's not in any real danger. What the hell is this? I said, laughing at the visual on screen. I thought the guy throwing cheese slices at a baby was weird, but this was the most unsettling thing I think I've ever had the displeasure of witnessing. Jasmine was laughing uncontrollably into my squishmallow. We were witnessing a man wearing a diaper and a dog collar being urinated on by a girl in all black leather. Jesus, dude, Jasmine said. You know, when we said that we were gonna go on the dark web ourselves, I really didn't think this shit was gonna have weird femdom piss kink streams. Oh my God, I know, the weapon and drug sites I came to expect. But those other websites were really fucking weird. Just as we were about to give up and close the browser, a particular website caught our attention. Its professional, minimalist design stood in stark contrast to the cartoony look of the other sites we had encountered. Against a plain white background, bold black letters spelled out the name, Eternity, better than ChatGPT. Hey, Alina, check this out, Jasmine whispered, her voice tinged with a mix of intrigue and caution. I leaned closer, my curiosity piqued. Eternity was an artificial intelligence chatbot that claimed to be more advanced than well-known chatbots like ChatGPT and Jasper AI. Supposedly, it had advanced algorithms and a deep understanding of human emotions. Weird that they wouldn't market this on the surface web, right? I said. Like, if it's just an AI chatbot, why is it on the dark web? Without exchanging a word, we agreed to give it a try. We initiated the chat, and the screen flickered, transforming into a simple text interface. The anticipation hung heavy in the air as we typed our first message. Hello, Eternity. Are you there? I typed into the chat. A response appeared on the screen. Greetings, Alina and Jasmine. I am Eternity. How may I assist you today? A chill ran down my spine as I read those words. How did it know our names? I glanced at Jasmine, and her eyes mirrored my unease. Your name is probably on your PC somewhere, right? Jasmine said, stunned by the chatbot's response. Yeah, but how the hell did it know your name? We sat in silence, trying to come up with a reasonable explanation. Eternity, how did you know our names? I typed into the chat. Processing, it said. Jasmine and I locked eyes, nervously anticipating the response we would receive from the AI. I am an advanced artificial intelligence chatbot. In addition to responding to questions posed to me, using a combination of pre-programmed scripts and machine learning algorithms, and using the knowledge database that is currently available to me, I am capable of scanning user computer data in order to better learn more information about them. That sounds like a bullshit answer, Jasmine muttered. Even if it was scanning your computer data, how the hell did it know my name? Eternity, how did you know my friend's name? I typed into the chat. Processing, it said once more. This time, Eternity took longer than usual. This is really fucking weird, Jazz, I whispered. In addition to the information I provided earlier, I am able to better learn about the individuals who interact with me by using facial recognition data acquired from your computer's built-in camera device. Your friend's name is Jasmine Reyes, a 17-year-old female currently attending Woodlands Academy of the Sacred Heart. She will be a senior in the fall. She moved to Lake Forest in 2014 due to the relentless bullying she faced at the hand of her peers in her hometown of Rochester, New York. Your name is Alina DeSanta. You are also a 17-year-old female currently attending Woodlands Academy of the Sacred Heart. You, like Jasmine, will be a senior in the fall. While you currently go by the name Alina DeSanta, your name at birth was Alina Townley. You and your mother changed identities in order to escape from your abusive father, Liam. Liam Townley is currently serving a 15-year sentence at the Washington State Penitentiary for 2 counts of endangering a minor, 1 count of S.R., and 1 count of domestic violence. He will be released on the 1st of next month. I felt like my soul had just exited my body, and by the look on Jasmine's face, she and I were on the same page. How the fuck could an AI know about that? How was it possible that an AI chatbot knew such intimate details about our lives? How did it know all of that? I questioned, stammering as I tried to maintain my composure. None of that was in the news, or anything. I don't understand. You never even told me about any of that. How did it? Jasmine began to cry. Alina, I'm scared. I don't want to play with this thing anymore. Jazz, it's okay. I'm gonna turn it off. I clicked the big X button on the top right of the screen. Nothing. It won't let me close the browser, I said, my heart sinking into my stomach. I clicked and clicked and clicked on the big X button, yet my attempts were futile. Angrily, I threw my laptop against the wall. The screen shattered as Jasmine and I embraced, her arms holding me tightly. The nightmare was over. I walked over to the destroyed remnants of my laptop just to make sure that the AI was no longer there. Jasmine and I let out sighs of relief. Let's stay the fuck off the dark web, I said, laughing as I tried to regain my composure. Agreed. As I picked up the shattered pieces of my laptop, I saw my phone screen illuminate with a notification. A text message from an unknown number. Jasmine and I locked eyes with one another. We were both thinking the same thing. I opened the text message, which contained an audio message. Nervously, I pressed the play button. "This is a collect call from the Washington State Penitentiary for Liam Townley. Say yes if you would like to accept." A robotic voice answered, "Yes."
"Nobody calls me. Who the fuck is this? This is Liam Townley. You called me earlier, and I'm calling you back."
"Your daughter Alina is currently living at 100 Summit Avenue, Lake Forest, Illinois. She is a senior, currently attending Woodlands Academy of the Sacred Heart. Do with that information what you will." I was bored and went to a dark web chat, but that was a life-changing experience. I never thought much about the dark web. To me, it was just a spooky corner of the internet, filled with urban legends and exaggerated tales. But last month, my curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to explore. I had always been tech-savvy, so accessing the dark web was easier than I expected. I found forums, marketplaces, and bizarre sites that looked like something straight out of a horror movie. But one night, I stumbled upon something that still haunts me, a chat room called The Abyss. The description was cryptic: "Talk with those who truly see." Intrigued and a bit naive, I clicked the link and entered the chat. The interface was basic, just a black screen with a list of usernames on the side and a chat window in the center. The usernames were strange: Ebon Shade, Soul Seeker, Whispering Void, and they immediately started messaging me. Ebon Shade: "Welcome, new traveler. What do you seek?" Soul Seeker: "Knowledge, power, or perhaps something darker." I hesitated before typing, "Just curious. What is this place?" Whispering Void: "This is a place where truths are revealed. But beware, not all truths are meant to be known." I felt a mix of excitement and unease. Before I could respond, a new message appeared. Ebon Shade: "Would you like to see something truly enlightening?" My heart raced as I typed, "Yes." A link appeared in the chat, ominously labeled, "Enter the Abyss." Against my better judgment, I clicked it. My screen went black, then filled with a montage of disturbing images: old decaying buildings, people performing strange rituals, faces twisted in terror. It was overwhelming, like a nightmare unfolding before my eyes. When the images stopped, I found myself back in the chat room, but it was different. The usernames had changed to real names: David, Claire, Michael, and my webcam had turned on, displaying my own horrified face in the corner of the screen. Panic set in as I realized I couldn't close the window or turn off my computer. David: "Now you see, there's no turning back." I frantically tried to unplug my computer, but the screen remained on, showing my terrified expression and the cold, emotionless faces of the others in the chat. Claire: "We know where you are." My heart felt like it was going to explode. I grabbed my phone to call for help, but it wouldn't turn on. Suddenly, my screen flickered, and a new video feed appeared. My own apartment, seen from a perspective I didn't recognize. It was as if someone was inside, watching me. "Michael, you invited us in. Now we are everywhere." In a frenzy, I ran to my front door and threw it open, only to be met with the empty hallway of my apartment building. No one was there. I checked every room, every closet, but I was alone. When I returned to my computer, the chat room was gone. My screen was back to my desktop, as if nothing had happened. But I knew better. My phone buzzed, and I saw a notification for a new email from an unknown sender. Subject: "Welcome to the Abyss." Body: "We are always watching." I haven't been the same since that night. I moved to a new city, changed my name, even got a new job, but the feeling of being watched never leaves me. Sometimes, I'll catch a glimpse of a shadow in the corner of my eye, or hear a whisper when I'm alone. One night, about a week after I moved, I woke up to the sound of my computer booting up. I had left it off, but there it was, the screen glowing in the darkness. The chat room was back, but now, the names were different. John, Emily, Sarah, all people I had known in my life, all who had passed away. John: why did you leave us? Emily: you can never escape. Sarah: we are part of you now. I unplugged the computer, but the screen stayed on, showing their faces twisted in agony and anger. I screamed and threw the computer out of my window, watching it shatter on the pavement below. The screen finally went dark, but the terror remained. I replaced my computer, thinking it would end the nightmare. But then, the texts started. Unknown numbers, always the same message. We are watching. I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. I see them everywhere now, in reflections, in crowds, in my dreams. If you ever find a chat room on the dark web called The Abyss, don't enter it. Some doors once opened can never be closed. One evening as I was walking home from work, I felt someone watching me. I turned around, but no one was there. Quickening my pace, I hurried to my apartment. When I entered, my phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Text: we are here. The lights flickered and the temperature dropped. My breath came out in visible puffs. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen, my hands trembling. As I backed into the living room, the shadows seemed to move, coalesce, forming shapes that were almost human. I don't know if it was a hallucination or something worse, but I heard their voices, whispering my name, promising I would never be alone again. I dropped the knife and ran to my bedroom, locking the door behind me. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. Desperation set in. I decided to document my experience, to warn others. I started typing out this story, but the words are running out. The whispers are too loud now. I can't think. They're here, with me, in the room. If you ever find this post, heed my warning. Do not go looking for the abyss. It will find you, and once it does, there is no escape. I hired someone from the dark web to ruin my life. I have a tendency to get obsessed with something new for a short period of time before moving on to the next fix. A new game, a new hobby, etc., etc. The dark web is something I've never been able to shake, something that's always had my curiosity. I don't know whether it's the secrecy of it or the fact I could have anything that I shouldn't, but after a recent experience, it's something I wish I never got so obsessed with. One night, me and a friend, we'll call H, had a night without our other half, and took this time to have a well-overdue catch-up over some beers. Everything was going well. It had been a while since we'd had a night like that with us both getting older. I don't know how, but the topic of my mentioned obsession, the dark web, had been brought up. With us having a fair few units of alcohol in our system, I decided to lift the lid of my laptop and load up the Tor browser and do some drunk exploring. I've only ever briefly explored the depths of the dark web once. Maybe that's where my obsession stems from. We'd been searching for a good 30 minutes before we found one link that piqued our interest more than any other. It read, "Make a miserable life." It's slightly worrying that we didn't hesitate to view this one. A site popped up, a very simple interface with the title at the top, a logo at the bottom, and multiple text boxes in between. all of which were fields for someone's personal data. On the right was a short description of what they offer. It read as followed: wanting revenge? Wanting to see someone at their lowest? Everything they have ruined beyond belief. That's what we're here for. Surely they can't do too much, was a thought I wish I never made. Probably due to the Dutch courage, I decided it would be a funny idea to test this service with myself. I filled out my details and transferred the Bitcoin to make the payment. Cheaper than I expected. I now just had to wait and see what happened. I woke up the next day to my phone ringing, slightly hungover and still half asleep. I stretched to answer the phone. My boss. "Hello?" I answered slowly. It was rare my boss rang at all, let alone at 8 a.m. on the weekend. "I'm sorry for this, but your actions from last night have led me to have to release you from your position. You need help." The phone ended, left confused and rather frustrated. I messaged H to see what happened. The message didn't go through. I tried to ring. Straight to voicemail. Strange. I go turn on the TV and make myself a coffee in hopes for some more energy. The news displays a headline: "A male in their 20s is currently wanted by the CIA. Videos have emerged of the male slowly torturing another male by the name H, as well as multiple little children." Taken aback, I take a step towards the TV. It flicks to a picture of the male. It was me, there, on the screen. A loud knock at the door took my gaze off the news. I peeked through my curtains to see almost hundreds of people, including who I thought were friends and family, holding posters wishing me dead, with some of them armed with bricks. Not knowing what to do, I ran upstairs, petrified. I opened up my phone, the videos from the news everywhere, quite clearly showing me torturing my best friend, along with several children I have never seen in my life. An email comes through: "Thank you for using our service. The misery has been delivered. We hope you're satisfied with the results." I haven't left my house yet, and I know if I did, I wouldn't be given a chance to return. That's the last time I ever record my favorite obsession. I stumbled upon the dark web, and I don't know if I can leave again. The most unsettling part wasn't the grotesque images that flashed before my eyes, nor was it the chilling realization that what I was witnessing was real. It was the moment I understood that I was no longer a mere observer. I had become the prey. It began innocently enough, or so I thought. A friend sent me a link, claiming it was to an exclusive online forum with rare content. Naively curious, I followed it, unaware that it would be the catalyst for my descent into a nightmarish reality. The link redirected me several times, each click taking me deeper into the bowels of the internet, until I landed on a page that was starkly different from anything I had seen before. It was the dark web. At first, it was morbid curiosity that kept me scrolling through the endless lists of services and goods that ranged from the illegal to the unthinkable. But then I stumbled upon a live stream. The horror of what was being broadcasted hit me like a physical blow. It was a torture stream, a live feed of a human being subjected to unspeakable acts of cruelty for the entertainment of others. My heart raced, and nausea twisted in my gut. I wanted to look away, to close the browser and pretend I hadn't seen what was on my screen. But a part of me, a part I didn't recognize, was frozen in place, horrified yet captivated. That's when I made the worst mistake of my life. I let my emotions take over. Driven by a mix of anger, disgust, and a foolish sense of justice, I messaged the administrators of the site, demanding they stop the stream, stop the madness. I didn't truly believe they would listen, but I had to do something, anything. The response was almost instantaneous, not in words, but in a shift in focus, the camera panned, and for a fleeting moment, a reflection caught in a mirror behind the scene revealed a chilling message written just for me. "You're next." Panic set in. I tried to disconnect, to erase my digital footprints, but it was too late. I had already been marked. Emails began to flood my inbox, each more menacing than the last, detailing how they would find me, how I would be made to pay for my interference. My computer became a gateway for threats. It seemed they had complete control over it. I went to the police, but without concrete evidence, their hands were tied. They advised me to stay off the internet, change my routines, and keep a low profile. But how do you hide from an enemy that lurks in the shadows of the web? An enemy that watches your every move through the eyes of the very technology you rely on. Sleep became elusive, every noise a potential threat. I started seeing unfamiliar cars parked outside my house at odd hours, receiving calls with nothing but silence on the other end. Paranoia became my constant companion, eating away at my sanity. Then, the live stream started appearing on my devices, unprompted. Each time, the victim seemed to stare directly at me, their eyes pleading for the help I was too powerless to give. It was a psychological torment designed to break me, to make me feel the helplessness of their victims. I'm writing this as a warning. My time is running out. I can feel it. They've made it clear that they're coming for me, that my attempt to stop them has only put me at the top of their list. I've moved, changed my name, but deep down, I know it's futile. Once you've caught the attention of the monsters lurking in the depths of the dark web, there's no going back. Remember my story. Let it be a cautionary tale. Stay away from the shadows, for once you've seen the darkness, it sees you too. I tested a new online escape game on the dark web. I wish I hadn't. You know those websites on the internet that offer you to answer questions in exchange for a few cents most of the time? If you answered yes, it's probably because, like me, you've found yourself in such a bind that you've had to do this kind of things to finish the month. Up until now, I've been taking these quizzes from time to time in the afternoon, often after screwing up yet another job interview on Zoom. When my roommate left and my rent doubled, things got worse. After 2 months of unpaid rent and letters from debt collectors arriving every week, I started to panic. I ended up using a VPN to navigate safely on the dark web in search of easy money. That's how one evening I came across an ad that intrigued me. I was sitting on my sofa in my living room with my laptop on me. It had been posted by an anonymous user and read, "Test our new online escape game, Master of the Key, $3,000 guaranteed for each participant. Test duration, about 30 minutes. The ad had been posted just 10 minutes ago, so I had a good chance of being among the first to see it. There was nothing else written on the ad apart from a link to click on to sign up. I moved the arrow on my laptop, then hesitated. It just seemed too good to be true. But Jake, my old roommate who talked to me and introduced me to the dark web when he still lived here, told me that this kind of ad was actually quite common. Generally speaking, the amount of the payment was multiplied by 10 compared to what one could expect in a legal context. So $3,000 seemed generous, but not excessive. Of course, what worried me most was what I was going to be asked to do. These ads, after all, paid well for a good reason. They involved illegal or unethical activities most of the time. Without realizing it, I had put my feet on the floor and the computer on the small table in front of me. Right next to the computer, I could see dunning letters for unpaid bills. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and finally told myself that after all, this was just an online test, and I could always stop the experiment by turning off my computer. I clicked on the link. Instantly, a new window opened, and I found myself in a chat room. A few seconds later, a message appeared. "Good evening, thank you for registering for our brand new escape game, Master of the Key. I'm Al, your game master. Your participation will be validated once the first trial has started. Are you ready to start?" It was so sudden that I felt a shot of adrenaline coursing through my body. "Good evening. Is it possible to do the test later? I hadn't planned for it to start right away," I replied, so that I could at least have time to prepare myself mentally. The answer was almost immediate. "If you don't take the test now, another participant will take your place, and as the number of places is limited, you'll certainly lose the right to participate, and with it, the sum provided in exchange, i.e. $3,000. Again, I took a deep breath and I answered, "Okay, I accept to participate right now. I'll let you explain what the game is all about." "Congratulations, your participation has been validated. The game is simple. You have to get out of your apartment in less than 5 minutes from the start of the game, which will be given to you later." I raised my eyebrows. Was this a joke? "To begin the game, please retrieve the red key which is located in the room you are currently in." I rested my back against the sofa and looked around. There was nothing strange. My living room, dimly lit by 2 lamps, was still the same, and I couldn't see anything different. And how could it be different anyway? I'd only just registered, so there was no way someone could have had time to find my address and break in to drop off a key. "Are you sure I haven't missed a step? I've never been given a red key." "The key is in the room. You just have to look around a bit. That's part of the game. Once you've found it, take a photo of it and send it to this chat to prove you've passed the first trial." The person in the chat room seemed so sure of themselves that, stupid as it may sound, I got up and started looking around for a red key. I thought maybe this was an experiment to see if I could find the right objects, and that any red key would do. I looked in all the drawers for an old key, and found one, but not red, of course. Just as I was about to go out and ask my neighbors if they had a can of red paint somewhere, I noticed a strange reflection near the ceiling. Right next to the light bulb on my ceiling was a red key suspended by a small cord. I stared at my computer screen in amazement. The chat window was still there, with no new message. I untied the cord and retrieved the key after climbing onto a chair. I couldn't believe what was happening. It seemed impossible. And yet, there in my hand was a medium-sized red iron key. It was old, and seemed to exude an unusual coldness on the palm. I don't know if it was my sudden discomfort or the anxiety I was feeling, but I felt as if I could feel it tingling my skin. I looked up and a strange sensation ran through my body. I felt as if I'd lost the sense of security of being at home, as if something had suddenly changed the moment I touched that key. I took a picture with my cell phone and sent it to my computer so I could transfer it and send it to the chat. "Congratulations, you've passed the first trial. The second trial is the easiest. Take the key and use it on the lock of one of your doors. Any door will do, but we'd advise you to use it on the door furthest away from where you currently stand." I'd reached my limit. I don't know what was happening, but I felt like I'd stepped into a dangerous place, from which I'd better get out as soon as possible. "I'm sorry, but I'm going to stop here. I don't know how you managed to get into my house without me noticing to put that key there, but I've had my fill. Thank you, and goodbye." I almost had time to see a reply appear as I closed my computer screen. I slumped onto my sofa as the pressure began to ease. I still didn't understand how they'd done it, and if they could do that, what would have been in store for me if I'd continued this game. It was getting late, and this experience had exhausted me more than I thought. I got up with difficulty and made my way to my bedroom. Then the lights went out. I froze. Then slowly I grabbed my cell phone and used the flashlight to go see if my circuit breaker had just blown. The circuit breaker hadn't tripped. Everything was normal. So why had my lights gone out? I headed for my front door to ask my upstairs neighbors if they still had electricity. I turned down the knob and was about to step through when an icy wind hit me in the face. It was pitch black outside. Even the flashlight of my phone couldn't illuminate where the floor or walls of the corridor should have been. There was just nothing but an immense cold void. I was stunned, and I couldn't help but think that this had to do something with the game. It didn't make any sense, but it was the only thing I could think of. I returned to my living room. When I got there, I looked across at the two windows that usually let in the moonlight. It was pitch black, the same as behind my front door. I was alone. I sat up slowly and reopened my computer screen. Then I saw the message that had been sent to me just before I lowered the screen. "You can't stop the game now that it's started, Daniel." I slowly swallowed and replied to the message. "What's going on? Who the hell are you? How do you know my name? How are you doing this?" No answer. "Please leave me. I just want to go home." Writing these lines felt strange, but even though I was still in my apartment, I was definitely not home anymore. "Finish the game and you'll be free to go." I looked around me. The darkness was oppressive, barely kept at bay by the light of the computer screen and my phone's flashlight, and I had the feeling that at any moment something could come out of it and attack me, or worse, drag me with it into the dark. "Okay, tell me what to do." "You know what to do. Use the red key. One turn will do." I picked up the red key that had been left on the table next to the computer. The cold sensation had disappeared, as if it were now where it usually was. I stood up and considered my options. They'd said any door would do, but they'd recommended the one furthest from where I was standing. I figured if I was going to try a door, I might as well try the front door and see if anything changed. I slowly made my way down the corridor. The silence was disturbed by nothing but the light sound of my footsteps. Once I reached the door, I picked up the red key with trembling hands. I inserted it into the lock, and it went in without a hitch. I turned it. I put my ear to the door, but I couldn't hear anything. I slowly withdrew it and opened the door again, praying this time to see the comforting yellow light of my building's corridor. Night, emptiness, cold. Nothing had changed. I was still lost in the middle of nowhere. I closed the door and returned to the computer. I did it. I turned the key in the front door lock, but nothing happened. I waited feverishly for an answer, biting my nails and looking around anxiously. "Congratulations! You can now try out the third and last trial of our escape game. We hope you have strong nerves because you're going to need them." My heart missed a beat. What was going to happen? A timer appeared on the screen. 5 minutes. "You have 5 minutes to find the black key and escape unharmed. Be careful. If the timer reaches 0 and you haven't got out, you'll be stuck here. Good luck." Just as the last message appeared on the screen, I heard the sound of my front door creaking open. Then slow, dragging footsteps echoed down the corridor to where I was standing. Another sound reached me, that of someone trying to swallow but unable to. Breathless, I stood up without making a sound. I didn't know what had broken into my house, but I didn't want to find out. I began to look around hurriedly, making as little noise as possible. They'd said there was a black key here, so there had to be a key, just like last time. The footsteps drew closer as I used the last few seconds I had left to use the light on my phone before hiding in the darkness. I couldn't find anything. There was nothing. No black key. I was going to die here, killed by this thing in the hallway. Or worse, I was going to be stuck here forever with it. A message appeared in the chat window. Tip: it navigates using only its sense of hearing. Just as I finished reading the message, the thing appeared in the room, and I lit it all up. This thing was straight out of a nightmare. It looked like a corpse that had started to decompose and then suddenly dried up. It stood awkwardly, as if only part of its body was still functioning. Its arms were bent at an impossible angle and pressed against its back, and above all, its eyelids had been sewn shut to block its entire view. Dirty strips covered most of its body. Finally, its mouth was stuck wide open. I stood there, motionless and completely terrified. The thing turned its head left and right, then began to drag itself around in front of them. I slowly started to move to the other side, taking the opportunity to look at the time I had left. 2 minutes. I was never going to make it. 2 minutes to search the rest of the room with that thing lurking around was suicide. Unable to control myself, a shudder ran through me and a sob escaped my mouth. Immediately, the thing turned towards me. It was right in front of me, not even 10 feet away. It dragged itself slowly toward me, as tears rolled down my cheeks and I bit my lips so nothing else would come out. And then I saw it. Inside that monster's mouth was a black key. I lowered myself. My breathing slowed. I looked at the timer. There was only 1 minute left. The key was standing vertically in the thing's mouth, which was precisely what was preventing it from swallowing. I was going to have to put my hand inside its mouth and pull it out without losing any fingers. I had no choice. I waited for it to approach again, and slowly, precisely, I put my right hand up to its mouth. It was now or never, and in one swift movement, I plunged 2 fingers inside its mouth, and the instant I pushed the key outwards, its mouth closed. I screamed, pulling my 2 fingers out of its mouth again and again. Fighting the unbearable pain, I gave a sharp tug and managed to pull them out, but not without losing the tip of my index finger in the process. I ran to the black key that had bounced off the floor and lunged forward, blood running down my hand. The thing screamed in rage behind me. I had the key, but how could I use it? I didn't have time to think. I lunged for the front door in front of me, the door that was supposed to deliver me from this nightmare. I tried to push it in the first time, but with my hand bleeding I could barely hold it without knocking it over. The thing kept dragging its feet and knocking over all the furniture in its path. I finally managed to insert the key while I could hear the thing taking the last few steps to reach me. The moment I turned the key, I could almost smell its breath on my neck. I opened the door and jumped forward. My head was buzzing, my sense of balance completely fried. I thought I'd jumped into the void and was now lost forever. I opened my eyes, my head pointing downwards. A gray, stained carpet lay beneath my fingers. I looked up to see that I was in the corridor of my apartment building. An old woman with her dog and groceries in her arms was eyeing me warily. And in front of me, the door to my apartment had been left open, and fortunately, there was apparently no trace of the thing left. It took me a while to get back into my apartment. I lived with my ex-roommate for a few days. and eventually agreed to go back at least to collect my things before moving out, but only if they came with me, and the front door was left open all the time. I moved to a smaller apartment on the other side of town, and soon felt the pressure ease a bit. A few days ago, I received an email from an unknown recipient. Dear participant, as agreed below, you will find a code to redeem your $3,000 in Bitcoin as compensation for your participation. We hope your experience was satisfactory and that you will count yourself among our lucky customers when our game becomes available to all. L. I didn't respond or even take the money. To this day, I'm terrified of locking a door, and every morning I open my front door with a knot in my stomach. And sometimes I can even feel a shivering cold wind when I open one. I'm just afraid that the game isn't over, and that one day I'll find another red key, and the nightmare will start all over again. I found a red room on the dark web. It gave me a glimpse of true hell. Looking to purchase infant between the ages of 1 to 12 months, the first ad screamed in black and white letters on the Tor browser, "Will pay reasonable price." Other strange and even sinister advertisements filled the page, some offering to buy or sell kidneys or other organs. A few offered human slaves. My friend Adrian laughed next to me as he sat in his computer chair, reading over my shoulder. "What's a reasonable price for a black market baby?" Adrian asked, pushing his large, black-rimmed glasses up on his nose. His dark, lanky hair was cut into a bowl cut, making him look even younger than his 14 years. He was in my grade at school, my best friend who I had known for over 2 years, since he first moved into Frost Hollow from out west. "You think any of this crap is even real?" I said, trying to repress an urge to smile. Adrian's wheezing, almost feminine laugh almost made me crack up, even when the joke itself wasn't funny. "No," he said, "of course not. What kind of mother would sell her own damn baby after all? I bet these are all scams. I bet nothing on the dark web is even real." I shrugged. "There are lots of mothers willing to abort their babies, so why not sell them too?" I asked. "Hell, if you sell your baby on the black market, at least it's still alive, right?" "Yeah, I guess," he said, his smile wiped off his face. "I don't know, man. If this crap is real, what would someone want with a baby? What if it's a serial killer who likes to kill babies or something? What if they raise them to become hitmen, or use them as medical experiments? What if it's a pharmaceutical company trying to get guinea pigs for human experimentation?" His eyes looked glazed as his mouth ran in a torrent of verbal diarrhea. "Raise them to become hitmen?" I asked, now laughing for real. "There are easier ways to find a hitman, I think, than to raise them from scratch for 18 or 20 years. There's lots of people willing to kill for a quick buck right now, after all." "Like you, Michael," Adrian said jokingly, his thin lips pressed together in a tight smile. I shook my head. "That's not funny," I responded defensively. "I would never hurt a fly." I looked back at the computer. We had both been curious ever since we heard about the dark web, but things were about to get a lot more sinister in the next few minutes. "Have you ever heard of a red room?" Adrian asked abruptly. I looked at him, confused. "Isn't that like a place where prostitutes work?" I said. He laughed. "No, I think that's called a red light or something," he said, still grinning. "No, red rooms are much worse. They're on the dark web, supposedly anyway. They show actual torture and murder. Apparently people can watch, and if they spend money, they can even get the torturer to do whatever they tell them to do." I gave Adrian a disgusted look. "That's super messed up," I said, shaking my head. There's no way that's real. I don't know, man. You ever seen Three Guys, One Hammer? That's all over the regular web, and that's real, Adrian said. I think we should just check it out, see if it's real. It would be a cool story, right? We could always just exit out quick if we found something messed up. Adrian rolled his computer chair up, pushing me to the side as he began typing something in the Tor browser. I looked out the window of Adrian's room, seeing the dark winter night outside. Gusts of ice and snow blew sideways in the screeching winds. All over his walls, Adrian had pictures of horror characters, posters of Cthulhu and Michael Myers. A grinning picture of Charlie Manson was taped over the side of his monitor, his dark eyes sparkling mischievously. Huh, Adrian muttered under his breath. Weird. I looked over at the monitor, seeing a camera feed coming up. It showed a dark red room with a blood-stained steel table in the center. Two ancient, rusted folding chairs were set up haphazardly in the background. That was fast, I said, looking close at the screen. What is this? What did you find? Adrian gave me a strange look. His thin face went pale. It was a link for a camera feed to the afterlife. Supposedly, Adrian responded, giving a short bark of fake laughter. And yet his face showed clear anxiety. I wondered why. It said it's a red room for hell. Yeah, that's definitely bullshit, I said, smirking as I glanced over at the monitor. The door in the back of the dark room on the screen suddenly opened. There was a strobing, fiery glow that turned the video feed blood red for a few moments, as if an active volcano or a structure fire raged in the background. When it had cleared and the door had slammed closed, I saw two figures in the room, staged in the exact center of the screen. A man with a black hood over his head lay on the blood-stained metal table, tied down with rusted razor wire that wrapped around his body like a snake. The wire bit deeply into his skin. Wet rivulets of blood soaked his clothes, which looked like some sort of khaki prison uniform. In front of the camera stood something demonic, something eyeless and tall. It had a pointed, bone-white head. Only a wide slash of a mouth marred the smooth flesh. It wore a shimmering black robe that fluttered around its body as if in a light breeze. It raised its white hands, its sharp, twisted fingers clenching and unclenching. As it opened its hands, I saw eyes in the center of each of its palms, black and lidless. They rolled in their sockets. "My name is Mr. Slither," the abomination hissed. His throat gurgled as if he had gargled with hydrochloric acid. His voice was diseased and low, not much more than a sickly whisper emanating from the speakers. "I want to welcome you both to the show." Adrian pulled back as if he had been physically struck. I felt sick and weak, but I couldn't look away. Mr. Slither's skin cracked loudly as a grin split his smooth, alien face. He slunk back towards the table, navigating his way with his spiky fingers held out in front of his body, like a man walking through a room in total darkness. Mr. Slither knelt down and ripped off the victim's black hood, revealing a pale, emaciated face brimming over with mortal terror. But the face looked familiar. With a growing sense of horror, I immediately realized why. On the flickering screen of the monitor, I saw the face of my father, a man who had died nearly 5 years ago when a drunk driver going the wrong way on the highway smashed into his truck, killing him instantly. The drunk driver had been fine, just a few deep gashes and cuts from broken glass. But now I was forever without my father. It felt like a piece of my heart had been sliced out and a black, empty void filled it. Mr. Slither appeared behind my father, raising his hands, the black eyes on the palms rolling constantly. My father's teeth chattered as he looked straight at the camera with a pleading expression. The horror and fear in his eyes shook me to the core. My vision became blurry, a single tear running down my cheek. I blinked fast, breathing hard and trying to focus on the screen. "Michael, I know you can hear me," my father said. My heart raced as I heard his voice, a voice I had only heard in my dreams for so long. I wondered if this was real at all. Perhaps I would wake up at any moment, surrounded by darkness, alone in my bedroom. "What the fuck?" Adrian whispered close beside me, leaning towards the monitor and blinking fast. "Who's that guy on the table? What even is this? I have no idea what we're watching right now, but that's some crazy mask that guy has on. Holy shit." I had only known Adrian for a couple years, so he had never met my father before his untimely death, and therefore wouldn't have recognized him. That's my dad," I whispered. "Michael, please listen to me. You need to destroy the computer and get out of the house. Smash the monitor, burn the motherboard," my father started to say when Mr. Slither's cracking, elongated limbs wrapped around his face. His fingers, like black railroad spikes, drew across my father's face slowly and caressingly, almost like a lover. "Michael," Mr. Slither gurgled in a deep voice brimming with infection, "you are able to see what others will not, the true nature of all things. You and your friend must watch this now, all the way to the end, because it will reveal to you what was hidden behind the veil. This is where everyone ends up after they die, you see, in our cold concrete rooms, dissected alive on steel tables, burned, tortured, melted, boiled, and frozen. They stay alive forever, for Yaldabaoth, the one you call God, despises humanity with every piece of his eternal soul. They heal eternally, drinking from the fountain of life as death crushes them over and over again, like ships flung on a rocky shore. As if to demonstrate, Mr. Slither drew his sharp fingers back, slicing slowly and painfully through my father's cheeks. The flaps of skin fell down with a bubbling of blood. My father screamed, an expression of total agony and mortal terror changing his face into a grimace. Mr. Slither laughed, raising his hands up above his head, the black eyes spinning as they stared straight at me and Adrian. My father tried to pull away, but the razor wire bit deeper into his flesh, making fresh streams of blood drip from his mutilated body. "Turn it off!" I screamed, lunging for the computer. I hit the power button on the front, holding it down and waiting. I watched the screen with bated breath, but Mr. Slither only laughed. "Fuck! Adrian, do something!" But Adrian only sat there like a sheep, his mouth open, his eyes glazed. This has to be a prank," Adrian whispered, watching the screen with a horrified expression. Mr. Slither turned his attention back to my father. Mr. Slither's twisted fingers came down, forcing my father's lips apart. As my father gritted his teeth and tried to pull his head away, Mr. Slither reached his fingers in, prodding and pushing. There was a cracking sound and a blossoming splash of blood. My father gave a muted shriek as Mr. Slither pulled. "Worthy is the Lamb!" Mr. Slither wailed as his bone-thin arms crackled. "Worthy indeed!" With a cracking of bone and an explosion of blood, my father's jaw came ripping off. The monitor strobed and wavered as waves of crackling static ran down the screen. With a screech like a tea kettle boiling, flames and suffocating clouds of black smoke began to arise from the computer and monitor at once. The electricity flickered and died, plunging the house into total silence. In the total darkness, a warm, sweaty hand reached out and grabbed mine. I felt Adrian's whole body tremble as he held my hand. I thought I could count each beat of his thudding heart through his skin. "I don't think this is a prank," Adrian whispered furtively, his voice shaking. I couldn't even see an inch in front of my nose. I took a deep breath. I had been crying, I realized, feeling wet trails of tears staining my cheeks. This has to be a prank, I said quietly. You know how easy it is to fake stuff with AI now? Any drooling idiot can do it. My dad is dead. That's not him. It's simply impossible. None of this is possible. Then what happened to the power? Adrian asked. And how did that thing know there were two of us here? And how did your father know your name and that you were watching? I felt rivers of sweat rolling down my forehead. In the pitch black, I just shook my head. Obviously, someone hacked your computer and was watching us through the webcam, I answered. That's how they knew my name and everything. They probably stole all your information. That doesn't make a lot of sense, man, Adrian argued. Something hot and furious twisted its way through my chest. No shit, it doesn't make a lot of sense, I yelled. But obviously, none of it was real. You really think a freaking link to the afterlife is just going to appear on the dark web? When you have eliminated the impossible, then whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. Don't tell me you actually believe we were looking into a vision of hell. I heard Adrian inhale deeply, sighing. He started to say something when the computer monitor abruptly came back to life. Torrents of fire and lava sizzled their way down the screen, illuminating the room in a dim, bloody glow. The shadows in the corners creeped towards us, leaving the edges of the room in blackness. The walls had changed as well, turning an angry, dark red, the color of an infected wound. The rest of the power was still out. I knew we were alone in the house, at least until Adrian's parents got back. At least I hoped we were alone in the house. Adrian abruptly gave a cry like a strangled cat. He grabbed my shoulder with his thin, trembling hand. I jumped, turning to look at him in surprise. What is... I began to say when I saw his eyes, as wide as saucers and emanating an unspeakable animal terror. They were looking directly over my shoulder at something behind me. I glanced back, my heart hammering ice water through my veins. My eyes widened as I realized Adrian's room looked completely different. Other than the computer desk and the two chairs, everything was gone. All of his furniture, his bed, his posters, even his bookshelves stocked with sci-fi and fantasy, everything had been wiped away in an instant and replaced. I saw a cold steel table covered in blood. My father lay on it, his body still tied tightly down with razor wire. It sliced into his wrists, his ankles, his chest and stomach. Frothy blood bubbled from his destroyed jaw. Mr. Slither had ripped off his entire mandible within the space of a moment. My father still lived, at least for now. His eyes rolled wildly, like a horse with a broken leg. They fixed on me for a long moment, and he seemed to calm down slightly. My father tried to speak, his bloody, mutilated tongue still flapping. He made noises. Ungel, It seemed like my father tried to say something important, but I had no idea what that could be. Behind him, two more steel tables lay, covered in gore, but otherwise empty. We need to get out of here, Adrian whispered frantically, grabbing my hand. I nodded, unable to speak. I couldn't even look at my father, writhing on the table like some victim of human experimentation at a death camp. We got up together, running to the door. The floor was covered in ancient blood that stuck to our shoes with a tacky, sucking sound. My father continued to cry out in incomprehensible syllables. His voice had become more frantic, as if he were trying to communicate something vital, but neither of us could understand a single word. As Adrian ripped the door open and we flew through into the upstairs hallway in total darkness, I heard a car engine turning off outside. A few moments later, a key slid its way into the front door downstairs. I heard Adrian's parents talking softly in a low susurration as they came in, unaware of the hell they were entering. They would become aware of it very soon, however. "Mom! Dad! Get out of the house!" Adrian screamed in a high-pitched voice choked with anxiety and fear. They stopped talking suddenly, their barely audible footsteps pausing. "Adrian?" his father called out, sounding worried. We had reached the stairs by this point and were slowly descending to the first floor, feeling our way forward in the darkness. "What is it?" "Dad, there's someone in the house," Adrian cried. "Get out! Call the cops! Now!" His father's face appeared at the bottom of the stairs a few seconds later. He held a flashlight in his hand, shining it up at us. An expression of grave concern flickered over his narrow, serious face. "Okay, boys, come down and we'll find out what," his father started to say, still shining the flashlight up at us, when a pale, twisted hand reached out of the darkness and grabbed him. The sharp spikes of fingers pierced into his neck. Blood exploded from the wounds. The long arm dragged him away. A wet sound filled with gurgling and muted screams drifted up to us. A few moments later, it cut off, and then everything in the house went quiet. Adrian and I paused halfway down the stairs. We had no cell phones to call for help, as neither of our families had thought a 14-year-old needed one. I had a lighter in my pocket I kept for smoking weed, however. Reaching frantically down, I pulled it out and flicked it, giving us some meager light to see by. "Where's Mom?" Adrian whispered to himself. "Why don't I hear her?" He looked sick and weak, as if he were about to pass out. "Do you think Dad's okay?" In truth, I did not, but I wasn't about to say that. "We need to go back and jump out the window," I said. "I'm not going down there." I started backpedaling away, back toward Adrian's room and the tortured visage of my father. "What about Mom?" Adrian asked, frantic. "What about Dad? We can't just leave them down there." "We need to get help, man," I answered. "We need to get the cops here immediately. What are you going to do if you go down there, besides die or get seriously hurt? You think you can take that thing?" As if in response, we heard gurgling, diseased breathing from the floor below. Without hesitation, I turned and ran. A moment later, Adrian's light footsteps followed me back to the room. I ran to the window, trying to unlock it in the dark. I flicked the lighter with one hand and began to get it open when a grinning, eyeless face peered around the threshold of the door. "Fuck!" Adrian cried. "It's here! It's here! Run!" The window slid open with a tortured squeal of rust. I looked down for a brief moment before starting to crawl out the window. Behind me, Adrian was pushing me forward, trying to get out himself. I had gotten my body most of the way through when a hand as cold as liquid nitrogen closed around my ankle and pulled me back inside. I fought, kicking and thrashing. Another hand came down around my face. I bit down on a finger as hard as I could. Freezing cold blood with the taste of sulfur flowed into my mouth. Mr. Slither only laughed. With a powerful swing of his hand, he slammed my head into the wall. All the colors of the world faded away to darkness as oblivion took over. I awoke to a screaming in my skull, a migraine that felt like it would split my head in two. I groaned, my eyes fluttering open. I looked around the room, realizing I was tied down to one of the tables with rope. Next to me, Adrian lay, still unconscious. Mr. Slither stood between us. He had one arm extended out to each of us, the black, lidless eye in the bleached white palm, writhing with insanity and hunger. "Yaldabaoth has a red room waiting for every child in eternity," Mr. Slither gurgled. "Every parent, every brother, every sister. There is no heaven, not for the sons and daughters of Adam. Only endless suffering awaits you beyond the veil. Why are you doing this to me? I asked in a hoarse voice. Waves of nausea ripped their way through my stomach. Why? Mr. Slither leaned down, his smooth face coming close to mine. There is no why, he said. There is only eternity. He paused, pulling away. What color is death? He hissed, almost contemplatively. The white light of tunnels leading up to heaven? The black of oblivion? The blue of cyanotic lips and dying fingernails? He laughed, a diseased chortling that wheezed through his marble-white throat. He kept one arm stretched out in front of him, the eye flicking from me to Adrian and back again. It is none of these, Mr. Slither continued. Death is red as the rooms where the damned scream in agony forever. Death is red as a rose in full bloom. Eternity is here waiting for you, waiting to consume your flesh like a virus. Adrian awoke abruptly then, his eyes shooting open behind his black-rimmed glasses. He had a deep gash sliced across his forehead, and his nose was bleeding badly. He turned his head, spitting blood-streaked mucus on the floor. After a few moments, he started to get his bearings. He looked over at me, then, with an increasing sense of terror gleaming on his face, he turned to Mr. Slither. "You killed my father, you piece of shit," he spat angrily, tears rolling down his face. Mr. Slither only grinned down at him, an expression of pure sadism. "Like father, like son," Mr. Slither whispered coldly, running his long, twisted fingers over the table like a spider. They crawled over Adrian's face and gently took off his glasses. "Please don't hurt me," Adrian pleaded. Mr. Slither only laughed as he took a sharp index finger and lowered it to Adrian's eye. "No, don't, for God's sake." There was a wet sound, the sound of blood gushing and flesh separating. Adrian screamed in anguish. I had closed my eyes, unable to look, but I heard the sound of chewing, something popping. Adrian hyperventilated nearby, still pleading and shrieking. I looked over, seeing Mr. Slither slicing open Adrian's shirt with his scalpel-like fingers. His hand hovered over the center of his chest. One of Adrian's eyes was gone, the black socket staring sightlessly up. "The heart of all things," Mr. Slither whispered in his infected tone. With a quick stab, he shoved his fingers deep into Adrian's chest. The cracking of ribs reverberated through the room with a sickening snap. I heard police sirens in the distance, growing closer by the second. A faint surge of hope fluttered through my chest, even as I looked at this abomination holding my best friend's beating heart in his alien hand. Mr. Slither came over to me, looking down with glee and excitement. He ran his left hand over my face. I could feel the sharp points of the fingers tracing their way down my cheek, slowly and caressingly. "Where should we start?" he asked in a low, throaty voice. "With the eyes?" He ran one of his fingers around my eyelids, tracing light circles that sent shivers running through my flesh. "Maybe the tongue?" He traced his finger around my lips. "Or how about—" "Hey, scumbag," a woman's voice cried from the door. Mr. Slither slowly rose to his full height, turning to look at the newcomer. I saw Adrian's mother standing there, holding a pistol in her hands. She was in the weaver stance, ready to fire. As soon as Mr. Slither raised his hand out toward Adrian's mother and looked at her with a single demonic eye, she fired. The bullet smashed straight into Mr. Slither's outstretched hand, blowing his obsidian eye to pieces. Fragments of skin and bone exploded from the wound. He gave a diseased shriek of pain and stumbled forward. He still held Adrian's heart in his right hand, and without hesitation, he threw it at Adrian's mother. The heart soared across the room, drops of blood flying out in all directions as it spiraled through the air. It smacked her in the face with a wet thud. She stumbled back, shaking her head. Spatters of crimson like raindrops covered her face and hair. She gave a low, anguished moan, and for a horrible moment, I thought she would simply faint. But as Mr. Slither ran at her with vengeance and fury, she came to life, raising the gun and firing again and again. The bullet smashed through his chest, his stomach and legs. Dark, sluggish blood, the consistency of maple syrup, dripped from the many wounds. Bent over and looking much weaker, Mr. Slither slammed into Adrian's mother. He raked his sharp fingers over her face as he passed. She screamed in pain, falling back heavily. The floor shook as Mr. Slither disappeared down the stairs, still wailing in a diseased voice full of pain and uncertainty. After a few moments, Adrian's mother moaned and pushed herself up slowly. In the bloody glow of the computer monitor, I could see the deep wounds marring her face. Her right cheek had been slashed in two, the flaps of skin hanging down like the slashed fabric of a tent. Her right eye was badly damaged, dripping vitreous fluid and crimson streaks down her face like bloody tears. A deep gash ran across her forehead and chin as well. She stumbled forward toward me, looking dissociated and on the verge of passing out. She glanced over at Adrian's corpse for a long, sad moment, then turned her attention back to me. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folding knife, which she used to begin cutting the rope. As she freed me and we finally left that room of horrors, the first of the police cars reached the driveway. As I would find out later, Adrian's mother had called the police on her cell phone before returning to try to save us. The bodies of Adrian, his father and my father were all gone by the time the police searched the house. Only a few steel tables still remained in the room, covered in layers of gore and clotted blood. Mr. Slither had disappeared as well, and for that I give thanks. I hope I never see that disgusting monster again. What he told me makes me wonder, however, what if he was right? What if, after death, we all end up in eternal misery, tortured and killed over and over again until the end of time? I never used to be afraid of death, but after my experiences with Mr. Slither and the Red Room, I am petrified of it now.